Okay guys, this is section 14.7, video number 1. In your textbook or your eVersion book, it's on page 866. So in this section, we'll talk about solving equations using the zero product rule. Okay, so first let me give you the definition of quadratic equation, because we're going to solve quadratic equations in this section. So quadratic equation is the equation which look like this: ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0, where a, b, c are coefficients. I'll just put it are real numbers. And also what is important, that a can't be 0, because if a is 0, you end up with the equation bx plus c equals 0, which is linear equation. Now, there are a couple ways to solve quadratic equation. And one of them is zero product rule. Zero product rule. So zero product rule, what we're trying to do with quadratic equation, we're trying to factor the equation and to create the product of two factors. And then using zero product rule, you're going to make each factor and make it equal 0. So we're going to solve two equations. So zero product rule. Okay, I'm pretty sure that you've been using that rule already. If the product a times b equals 0, so we have a product, a and b factors, then we're solving two equations. That means a has to be 0 or b has to be 0. So this is what we use to solve quadratic equations. One of the methods. Okay, so let's focus on solving equations using zero product rule. Okay, the first one will be x plus 1 times x minus 8 equals 0. So this is perfect what we have here. So note for us, we have product of two factors. So all the time when you have a product, okay, it cannot be plus, product, multiplication of two factors. So we're ready to use zero product rule. How are you going to do it? So this is how we're going to do it. Take each factor, which is parenthesis, set up equal to 0, and solve for x. Which means you're going to take x plus 1, that has to be equal 0, since the final solution is equal 0, or the second factor, which is x minus 8, has to be equal 0. Okay, and now we're solving. The first equation, I'm subtracting 1 from both sides, and you're getting x equal negative 1. That's our first solution. For the second one, you need to add 8 to both sides. You're getting x equal 8. That's our second solution. Okay. Also, one more note. Here, since you have a product of two factors, so again, don't FOIL, okay? Don't FOIL, don't distribute. You want to have product, which is multiplication of factors. I'm putting in plural because it can be more than 2 on the left side. Of the equation. And 0 on the right side. So if you FOIL, you end up with a quadratic equation, and again, you have to use AC method to get to this, which is x plus 1 times x minus 8 equals 0. Again, we always want to have what I just gave you guys. You always want to have product of factors. So let's solve the second equation. Let's do B. Let's practice that. We need to solve for x minus 5 times x plus 8 equals 0. So we have a product of two factors. We're ready to use zero product rule. So we're solving two equations. For x minus 5 equals 0. And the second equation, which we need to solve, x plus 8 equals 0. Solve for x. So in the first equation, I'm adding 5. We end up with 4x equals 5. And to isolate x, you divide each by 4. And we're getting that x is equal 5 over 4, one solution. And from the second equation, we're subtracting 8 from both sides. We end up with x equal negative 8. So when you're solving equation in section 14.7, all those equations will be quadratic equation. Your x, it's been raised to a second power, so you're going to expect to see two solutions. Okay, how you writing your final answer? So since we have two solutions, the best way to write the final answer will be list the solutions. So let's put the solution set is, and when we're listing the solutions, we're putting negative 8 and 5 over 4. Okay. Okay, let's do one more with zero product rule. So I'm giving you equation x times 4x plus 9. Here, this equation is also ready to use zero product rule. Since we have a multiplication right here. Okay, so all the time when you have a product and 0 on the right side, we're good to go. And you're solving two equations. Since the product is equal 0, that means x has to be 0, or 4x plus 9 has to be equal 0. One of them has to be equal 0, or maybe both. That's why we're solving two equations. So here we already have solution. For the second equation, just solve for x, subtract 9. We're getting 4x equal negative 9, and divide each by 4. So we're getting x equal negative 9 over 4. Two solutions. Let's write down the answer. The solution set So the answer of this problem will be this way. The solution set is, and just list your solution. -9/4, comma 0. Since we're listing the solutions, I'm putting the smallest one as the first one. However, if you won't keep them in order, not a big deal. It's still correct. Okay, so that was zero product rule. Now let's talk about second method of solving quadratic equations. So solving quadratic equations by factoring. So here we're going back to what we just learned in previous sections. So we spent so much time on AC method. So guess what? You're going to use that method again. So in parentheses, I will put AC method because that's the one which I teach you. Like I mentioned in previous sections, if you like to factor quadratic equation using different type of method, I'm okay with it as long your factors are correct. So how are we going to do it? Let's write the steps. This is how you're going to do it. So to be able to solve quadratic equation by factoring, so your quadratic equation will have a form ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. Again, that's our quadratic equation. This is what we're going to solve. Like you see here, you don't have a product, so we're not ready to use zero product rule yet. That's why we need to factor. We need to create our two factors. So step 1, write the equation in the form ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. Step 2, factor quadratic equation using, and again, I'm putting AC method because I teach you AC method, but there's many methods. Step 3, apply. When you will have factors from AC method, you can apply zero product rule. So zero product rule means that you're going to set each parenthesis, which is each factor, equal to 0. And solve two equations. So technically, you guys know what to do. This is new, okay, for us, because when we have our factors from AC method, we're going to make each factor equal 0. Step 4, usually I'm skipping that step and I'm asking you to check that by yourself, but check your answer. If on a test you have time to go back, check your answers, substitute your solution into our original equation. Into original equation. And just check if that will give you 0. And check if you are getting 0. Okay, so that's 4 steps. Again, I'm going to focus on step 1, 2, 3. Step 4, you guys can always check the solution at home. Okay, so let's do the example. Solve the quadratic equation. Solve the quadratic equations the one in form ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0 by factoring. Okay, we're going to do a couple examples so we can practice. Let's do the first one. 2x squared plus 19x equal negative 24. So step 1, move all to the left side. So what happened, to have a quadratic equation, ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0, you always want to have a 0 on the right side, so we need 0 here. So to be able to do it, I'm going to add 24 to both sides. So we will end up with 2x squared plus 19x plus 24 equals 0. So this is again definitely the quadratic equation in form ax squared plus bx plus c. That's what you need to have to be able to use AC method. Next, step 2, factor out 2x squared plus 19x plus 24 using AC method. Okay, so super important that we know how to factor. A is equal to, B is equal 19, C is equal 24. Okay, so first what we're doing, multiply A times C, we're getting 48. Next, we need to find two factors which by two integers, which by multiplication give us 48, which is AC, and the same two integers by addition has to give you coefficient B, which is 19. So we need to check what's going to work, and 16 and 3 definitely works. Okay, next, what we're going to do. Here you have to be careful. Don't forget that our leading coefficient A is equal to, so you have to create two factors. So don't forget that step. Create two factors. Let me rewrite that. Ax plus first integer times ax plus second integer. Okay. So this is what we're doing. In our case, a is equal to. So we're going to have 2x plus 16, because that was our first integer, times a, which is 2. So we have 2x plus 3. Okay. Don't forget that this is not your final solution. That's not your factors. When you create your factors, don't forget about the most important step. Factor out GCF from each factor, from each parenthesis. Okay, so we're taking that 2x plus 16 GCF, it's equal to, so we're going to factor out 2, which is the GCF, and that will give us x plus 8. Okay, when you find that GCF, don't forget that we ignore it. So you're only going to keep it x plus 8. So that's that algorithm. Next parenthesis, which is 2x plus 3. In this case, GCF is equal 1. Since the GCF is equal 1, so we're going to keep original parenthesis. So we keep original parenthesis when the GCF is equal 1. So, our equation, our final factors. Let's go back. So, 2x squared plus 19x plus 24 is the same as x plus 8 times 2x plus 3. Okay, so when you have your factors, okay, so we have two factors. We ready for step 3. Apply zero product rule. Make each parenthesis equals 0. So our first parenthesis, x plus 8, make it equal 0 and solve for x. And our second parenthesis, 2x plus 3, make it 0 and solve for x. Okay, so we're subtracting 8 from both sides. You're getting x equal negative 8. And the second equation, subtract 3. First, isolate that x. So we're getting 2x equal negative 3 and divide each by 2. And we're getting x equal negative 3 over 2. So we have it. So our final answer of this problem is negative 8 and negative 3 over 2. So two solutions. So let's list them. The solution set is, and when you're listing the solution, we're putting them together, negative 8, negative 3 over 2. So that was our final solution. Of course, step 4, you can check, you can plug in them into original equation where you used to have x, and you want to check if that will give you 0. Okay, next one, B. Okay, solve. So this is important. I'm giving you different quadratic equation, different types. Solve quadratic equation ax squared plus bx equals 0. Those type of the equation. Quadratic equation, which is in form ax squared plus bx plus c. So let's write note. No c. So c is equal 0. Okay. Why I'm giving you this example? Because when you don't have that real number, the coefficient, we can solve that actually much faster without AC method. So let's write note. No c. So c is equal 0. You don't have to use AC method here. Okay, so how are you going to solve it? Let me write the steps. Let me give you the example. So we're going to solve 4x squared plus 24x equals 0. Okay. In this case, in this example, a is equal 4, b is equal 24. There's no c, so c is equal 0. So when you have equation like this, step 1, factor out greatest common factor. So we have 4x squared plus 24x GCF will be, we have 4 and 24, so the integer which divide both of them, it's 4. You have x squared and x, so you pick variable to the lowest exponent, which is 4x. So we're going to factor out 4x. So this is the same as 4x times x plus 6. So again, how I got that x, I took the original expression 4x squared and I divide by GCF, and that's how I got x. That's how I got x. And then I took the second expression, which is 24x, divide by GCF, which is 4x, and that will give you 6. That's how we got 6 here. Okay, so we factor out the GCF. Okay, don't forget that our equation has to be equal 0. So we have 4x times x plus 6, it's equal 0. So next, solve 4x times x plus 6 equals 0 using zero product rule, which means take each factor and make it equal 0. So our first factor is 4x. 4x needs to be equal 0 since the product is 0. Or take the second factor, which is x plus 6, make it equal 0. So solve two equations. Okay, the first one, divide each by 4. You're getting x equals 0. That's our first solution. The second equation, just subtract 6 from both sides. We're getting x equal negative 6. So we got two solutions. Let's write down the answer. The solution set is negative 6, 0. So two solutions. So when you have a quadratic equation, when you don't have that coefficient c, you only have ax squared and bx, you don't need to use AC method for factors, because if you will factor out the greatest common factor, you will end up with something like this, where you have product of two factors and you can just solve two equations. You're ready to use that zero product rule. Okay, type 3. So different example, still quadratic equation, but the next example which I'm going to show you is we don't have that bx, the coefficient b is equal 0. So see, solving quadratic equations ax squared plus c again, a and c are real number. So solving quadratic equations when coefficient b is equal 0. Since coefficient b is equal 0, so that means that bx equals 0 from the quadratic equation. So this is original quadratic equation. B is equal 0. That means bx will be equal 0. So we'll have simplest form. That's how our equation will look like. Just ax squared plus c equals 0. Okay. So let me give you the example and also write down all the steps for you how to solve it. Okay. So when you have an equation like this, note, to solve it, you don't have to use AC method, just isolate x squared first, and then take the square root of both sides. It's going to make sense. Let me give you the example of solving quadratic equations. Ax squared plus c equals 0. So I'm giving you an example of something like this, so we can apply. Okay, so we're going to solve bx squared minus 45 equals 0. So this is quadratic equation. We have x to a second power. Coefficient a is equal 5. C it's always number which is by itself without x. It's equal to negative 45. So like you see, no b. So b is equal 0. Since I have a case like that, I'm going to follow the note which I gave you. So what I'm going to do first, I'm going to isolate the x squared. I want to get x squared by itself on the left side. So to be able to do it, we need to add 45 to both sides. So step 1, isolate x squared. So to be able to do it, we adding 45 and then divide both sides by 5. So we have 5x squared minus 45 equals 0. Add 45 to both sides. You're getting 5x squared equal 45. Divide each by 5. And we're getting x squared equal 9. So when you isolate that x squared, then you will move here. Next, what you're going to do, isolate x squared first and then take the square root of both sides. So next, step 2, take a square root of both sides. So we're taking the square root of both sides. X squared equal 9. When you take the square root of both sides, we end up with x equal 3 and x equal negative 3. So don't forget, square root of positive number will give you positive and negative solution. Okay, so here we have it. We got our two solutions, x equal 3 and x is equal negative 3. So let's write down the final answer. The solution set is negative 3 and 3. So some of the quadratic equation, like you guys see, have simple form. Either b is equal 0 or c is equal 0. So then you don't really need to go through the entire process of factoring using AC method. So I want you to just recognize, I know at the beginning, maybe we may not quickly realize which method we need to use. It just takes time and practice. So I'm going to stop here and I will post the second video soon of the same section. So section 14.7 will have two videos. Okay, thank you for watching.